Good evening, Matthew. How are you today?
I'm very good, Paul. Thank you. Yeah, all fine. How are
Brilliant.
you?
I'm very well. And I'm hesitating with the good evenings. I don't do many good evenings lately. And thank you very much for booking this one. It's a pleasure to be doing an interview in the evening.
Well, it's very nice to be invited, and I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. We have met online, obviously, on another Teams call, and we obviously talked about each other's business and got a good understanding. And from that, I was very keen to get you on the podcast to really open up the real understanding of infrastructure, which I'm sure we're going to do that today. So, for the benefit of the audience, is it possible for you to tell us about your background story and your origin story?
Sure. Um, so I guess I started in the 1990s in construction. I joined the graduate training scheme of a big international firm in London. Not as an engineer, I'm not an engineer, but I've always very attracted to project development and kind of creating things from nothing. And so the industry appealed, and they were interested in people who weren't engineers, and that really attracted me because I thought this is an industry that's actually getting a bit more modernized, and we're looking at different people with different commercial skills and
Hmm.
others. Um, so I went through the scheme, and then I emerged at a time when the private finance initiative was just starting in the UK. PFI, private finance, using private sector skills and money to invest in, develop, and operate and own major pieces of infrastructure in the UK. So things like motorways,
Right.
prisons, hospitals, and so on. And the firm I worked for were very keen to both uh, build these things, operate them, finance them, and then in 20, 25 years' time, after the license expired, hand them back. And so we were bidding for these concessions, as they were called, things like the M40, M1A1 link, various hospitals and prisons. And this was, for me, a really good introduction to developing big infrastructure, learning how to behave commercially to make sure that we were very competitive so that we could actually win, and just see how the whole jigsaw came together, which has always appealed to me. How these big things that we use all day long and take for granted actually happen.
Hmm.
So that, I found that a very interesting start to my career. And then in about the late 1990s, I did an MBA and went off. And then I joined a National Grid in the utility space, and that's where I've generally stayed. Again, commercial roles in the business development team at a time when National Grid, which came from a very sort of regulated, state-owned background, was looking to bring in more commercial skills, people who had infrastructure development experience, so they could grow their business. And I started off with quite a lot of overseas work in South America, Australia, North America, a mixture of looking at new opportunities to invest National Grid's money and and try to grow the business beyond the regulated network business. And we did that for quite some time, and then gradually got to run my own first big project, which was converting the LNG facility at the Isle of Grain in Kent. That was in about 2003, where we converted it from a straightforward sort of safety device at the end of the network, gas network, into an ability to import LNG on ships from all around the world. So that was a big, exciting project, and I led phase one and phase two, building a new jetty, new tanks for storing the liquefied natural gas, and with the team, a terrific team, developing the commercial contracts to have customers sign up for long-term arrangements to bring in their ships with their gas into the UK gas network. And that went well and reached financial close and is now um, the biggest storage facility in Europe. And it's a very large import facility for Britain, can handle about 20% of our UK gas demand. So it's a very big project. It's worth saying, I typically take projects through the development phase and then hand over to a construction or operational team. So I
Right.
take things to financial close or financial investment decision, and then hand over to people who are much better at building and operating these things than I would ever be.
Do you go
Um,
back on it at all? Is that once you've done that, then you're on to the next next project, or is there an involvement? Do you get asked to go back and look at things, or
So there is a handover period. So before I leave, we bring in the new person who will take over from, in this case, me, for a period of understanding of the project, because these projects take years to develop, and
yeah,
there's a lot of history. And what we don't want is the next person taking on a project and going, well, crikey, why did they do this? Or
yeah,
this seems illogical, or whatever. So we tried to make sure that there was always a good transition
mm,
period between us.
yeah,
Um, I have come back on projects, sometimes to sell them. So, for example, the company decided they wish to sell an asset, or bring in different partners, and because of my history, I might have come back to
yeah,
to look at the asset again. Um, and really, I also just personally want to go down and see how it's getting on.
mm,
There's nothing better than going to site and seeing the project you've worked on with your team for so many years
yeah.
turning into a construction project, and actually operating as a commercial venture. That's a really
Yeah,
fantastic
can
moment.
imagine that.
So after that, then I moved sort of more back into the electricity side, and interconnectors, electricity subsea power cables linking Britain with other countries. We hadn't done one since the 1980s, when National Grid was then still a state-owned entity, and that was to UK to France. And there were lots of difficulties, regulatory difficulties, commercial, but UK Netherlands was the first opportunity that we looked at. So we developed that with our counterparts, and this is where a lot of my work is with joint venture organisations. So it might be
Mm,
50% National Grid, 50% Tennet from the Netherlands, and who are the grid operator of the Netherlands. So forming these joint ventures, working out how you're going to operate together, given that there are two jurisdictions, you've got two governments, two regulators, two companies. There's a lot going on, and you've usually got some international waters in between. So that also requires a joint team. Do you have two people to run it? Do you have one person? So there's a lot of, human issues that have to be worked through, and corporate issues, which I find fascinating to
yeah.
enable these projects. So UK Netherlands was developed again. We
And
try.
where does it comes from Netherlands into where?
It comes into the Isle of Grain, as it happens, coincidentally,
Really?
because that happens to be a particularly strong part of the electricity transmission network. All
Yeah.
these connectors are quite big units, and they need
Was that
strong.
before the power station or after this power station?
It was after the power. So the power station
Yeah.
was done some time ago, and I think that was an oil-fired power station from
Yeah,
memory with
yeah.
the gas. And there was a BP oil refinery down there. So that whole Isle of Grain area has been used for decades as a bit of an energy hub. Then it
Yeah.
went very quiet, and since these projects, it's come back quite strongly with Grain LNG, BritNed, and other interconnectors also. Um, so yeah, so that happened, and then UK Belgium came along, Project Nemo, and then North Sea Link to Norway. That's the longest subsea interconnector in the world, and that connects our network with Norway's and their abundant supply of hydroelectric power. So, the interconnector model is really quite straightforward. It links two markets. Electricity will flow commercially to the highest priced market, and you're looking for arbitrage really between the two countries through power trading. They're full commercial operations. Norway has a lot of water. We can have a lot of offshore wind, and when we have too much wind, we can send them electricity at a lower
Yeah.
price, and
Yeah.
vice versa. When we have no wind and they have an abundant supply of water, they can send us hydroelectric power. So the model is quite simple, but getting them to actually commercial operations is extremely long and complicated.
Yeah. So
So
basically,
then, yeah,
getting the handshake across the river,
yeah,
the
yeah,
channel
exactly.
as such.
Yeah, and
It
projects
all
can take.
sounds great, but getting the handshake is the most important part, isn't it?
It is, and actually, that particular project had reached a certain development phase some years prior and collapsed because
Right.
the government officials were concerned in Norway about the equity, the equilibrium between, were the projects fair for was the project fair for both sides. And anyway, it came back and is now in full operation, and
Yeah.
both countries are receiving the benefits of that, which is very good given the advent of renewables and the need for greater transmission networks.
Yeah.
Um,
And the flexibility of going with the not enough wind or too much wind or you know because we have got that issue, haven't we? We don't want to overproduce. it provides a good balancing process, doesn't it?
Very, very much so. And in the old days, we had more stable, predictable supplies of,
Yeah,
fossil fuel powered electricity, coal, oil, and gas. And with intermittent renewables growing quite quickly, that needs a much stronger network, a transmission network, to move the power from where it's generated to where it's needed. So
yeah,
the grids across Europe and across the world are being sort of reinvented and rebuilt to a large extent. And
yeah,
that's without new transmission, we can't have the energy transition, really. So it's very
yeah,
important.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I did a few more of those and became head of business development for National Grid, looking after the portfolio of all these sort of projects in their development period. Um, and then I moved in 2013 to set up on my own. I wanted to change my lifestyle a bit, which we might come back to later. And I became an associate of several companies, had my own company, and went off to first was to Canada to help a Canadian client win a concession project to build a new AC transmission line across Alberta.
Right.
I went over and I just packed my bag and went off and lived and immersed myself with the client. And I think that's something I feel quite strongly about, that you need to really be part of
Yeah,
that team to be trusted and to understand what's going on. Because if a client hasn't done this before, it's really hard to just advise from a
yeah,
laptop in England.
yeah.
So we went off, and they were also the incumbent, the regulated incumbent in Alberta. So they were very nervous and concerned about new competition coming into markets, and that's understandable, and can be difficult to sort of deal with. But after about a year and a half's work, we in a joint venture with another American company won that project, and it's now built and operational. So
And
that was,
a very big oil city, isn't it, in
yeah.
Canada?
So Alberta's very oil and gas driven historically, and this project was to move more electricity up from the Edmonton region to the north to the area of Fort McMurray, which is
Right.
where the Canadians get a lot of their all their gas, I suppose, and from the sands up there. But it needed a lot more power,
Right.
so that's happening now. Well, I mean, the trouble with these projects, of course, is that sometimes the business case, the logic can evolve, but it invariably evolves, and the key is to make sure and keep testing that your project is still relevant and can be commercially successful despite the evolving landscape. And we've
Yeah.
seen in most of the projects I've mentioned, the business cases have evolved, usually staying on track, but what emerges at the end may look quite different from what it started out as.
Mm. Do you ever
Um,
have projects where you've worked on them and they just don't get over the line? Or, because you've rattled through quite a few projects that
yeah,
have sort of happened.
yeah,
I presume you're working on many projects at any one time.
yeah. Sometimes, a recent example was advising a client down in Australia. Again, big renewable push, a lot of land, and the competition was to put your team together and compete for the right to build a new transmission network in a certain part of Australia. So it's big project, and uh, my client has had all the skills. They were in joint venture. They had a financial partner to provide a lot of the equity. But at the end of the day, for a number of reasons, they decided to exit because there were concerns that the incumbent players down there had advantages. There were concerns about the supply chain. So over time, we developed a picture which said, actually, this is very difficult. It's possible for you to continue. You might secure the prize and win this.
Hmm.
But their feeling was the effort and the risks were too great, and so we exited the process. And I've done that twice now in Australia. That was with a North American firm, and then I've exited with an Asian firm as well. So yeah, we I try to advise and help guide clients to come up with the right decision. It's it can go the other way sometimes. Sometimes a client can be overly concerned about an issue through either lack of experience or lack of market knowledge, perhaps. And sometimes we have to be a bit more positive and push a bit more and just say, actually, with as much evidence as I can muster, say it is worth going to the next stage. You can always jump
Yeah.
off at the next stage, but it's worth, another 6 months of activity.
Mm.
But not always. As I've said, we've pulled out of stuff and we've pushed to continue. So it moves around.
Yeah. And what seems to always be your challenge? Is there always one common challenge that you have?
Uh, Perhaps. I mean, it's these projects are the one challenge that we don't tend to have is anything on the what I call the technology. It's not that it's easy, but that is usually something that we can work through with great engineers and so on.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
a big issue. We're not groundbreaking on the tech side, so that's good. I would say it's the human element. It's keeping the team, the client, the investors calm and um, content enough to continue and not
Yeah.
lose faith. Keeping their nerve. These are long projects with a lot of expensive development costs for many
Yeah.
years, and your client sitting there trying to make the case to their board of directors that they need another, I don't know, 10, $15 million to go to the next phase on what might be quite a speculative project. And that's tough. So getting the balance right and building the trust and the confidence, if you feel it's justified,
Yeah.
then I think that is probably a common theme across all of these projects.
Because with your experience of all those projects, you're going to think 100%, that that is you you can give the client the complete trust that you know what you're doing, but obviously there's still the bigger picture to look at, isn't there?
Yeah, and I go into projects without when I have gaps in my knowledge and background, of course, particularly in different jurisdictions around the world.
Yeah.
So I'm also learning, um, but we call it we try and sort of look around the corners before we get to the corner. We can sort of see around the corners where we've had the experience of something similar in the past. So we know, for example, that
Yeah.
you need to tackle the energy regulator 6 months ahead of this particular milestone on your program because it's going to take the regulator that long to deal with it and I don't know run a consultation or whatever. A very important milestone, and whereas if you suddenly bump up against it, then your project is automatically 6 months behind program. So looking ahead from previous experience is pretty valuable, but not I don't have all the answers, that's for sure, and
Yeah.
particularly in new jurisdictions.
And are we towards the end of where you are now? What's next for?
What's next? Well, I'm still so I have associate connections with about 4 or 5 organisations. Um, at the moment, I'm looking at one particular project which is in Southern Europe. Um, I'm fortunate. I really like working on interesting projects with people that I want to work with, and that's a lot of fun. And I sort of swerve things that don't meet those two basic criteria.
Yeah.
Also, I only want to work on projects which I think, with whatever knowledge I have, that they actually are viable. I'm not interested in working on a project and then without any faith that it's
Yeah.
likely to actually happen. Um,
For those who know me, they know I sometimes do a little bit of a Columbo thing here. I want to go back to the beginning. Was the first construction element, was there any energy related type projects within the PFI work?
None that I was involved with,
Right.
principally because in the early days of PFI, which I think went pretty well for the industry and the government, PFI was best directed at projects which are quite, I use the word dumb, highways, uh, just a
Yeah, yeah,
solid
yeah,
structure,
yeah,
nothing too exciting, nothing can go wrong, nothing's going to change much over 20, 25 years.
yeah.
All fairly old tech. So
Was there
no,
infrastructure involved regarding pylons or power? But it would have been street lighting, possibly, wouldn't there?
possibly, yeah. But yes, so it's very small scale stuff attached to a very
Yeah,
large infrastructure project. But in those days, most of the energy sector was still, in terms of the networks, was still in the sort of state control, I guess.
yeah. And the
So
reason why I asked that is just the interest in transition from the construction into, before you knew it, you're involved with very large well, national grid, for instance.
Yeah, and
Do
I
you think
guess the
so?
common theme is infrastructure rather than
Yeah,
highways or a transmission line. I mean, they're both long, linear, critical infrastructure assets, really.
yeah,
What goes down them is either a bunch of cars or electricity or
yeah,
gas or something. So there are some parallels, but so I'm fairly agnostic on the what goes down these things in a way. I think that the overall process to develop them and nurture them to financial close is what I kind of do.
yeah. And what about the existing infrastructure in the UK currently? Do you ever get to work on any of that, the national grid as we know it? Because not, I don't think it's owned by the national grid as such, is it? It's mainly owned by the overseas companies, isn't it?
No, National Grid is uh, a major FTSE 100 company, and its ownership is very widely held by institutions and private sector. So it's like many companies in the FTSE 100. It will have some overseas element, of course,
Yeah,
like all of them, I imagine. But it's a broadly held stock, I expect, and therefore quite typical. There's nothing particularly unusual. Um, so yeah, I mean, I still get to interact with them through some of these projects. So, for example, if a client is developing another interconnector that connects to the national grid, then there is an interface, and I'm able to use my knowledge of working there for 14
yeah.
years to some benefit. Yeah,
And
and so
what's your thoughts on the infrastructure in the UK? Because you talk to many people, they're saying that we need to invest in their infrastructure in the UK. Is there plans? Would you know in your field that we need to do work in that area?
yeah, as I say, without uh, investing in this case transmission, then we can't plug in the renewables at the volumes required to meet our targets.
Yeah.
So it is essential. It's without it, and this has been the criticism, and this is what the newish government is trying to unblock with the regulator to try to smooth and speed up the path for renewable projects to connect to the network, be
Mm.
it low voltage or the high voltage network. Um, and that includes sort of simplifying and maybe streamlining the planning and consenting process, which can take a great many years. And
Yeah.
it's very important, but there has somebody in government has to make that sort of balancing decision around, okay, well, how long can we let something be poked and prodded before we make a decision? And
Yeah.
investors get nervous because these things take a long time and they have uncertain outcomes sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think there's quite a lot of good work, in my view, to refresh how that is done, given the I think imperative need to bring more renewables onto the network. So yeah, I mean, the old day of the national grid was a lot of coal-fired stuff in the middle, strong grid in the middle, very weak extremities, relatively weak extremities at the edges of the country. And now, of course, a lot of the renewables is coming from offshore wind, which is all at the
Mm.
extremities
Yeah.
and needs to come into the middle. So it's a kind of complete reversal of the grid's characteristics in terms of its capacity and its strength. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. And is there, presumably, there's someone sitting at a desk somewhere with this woe is me type focus on what am I going to do? I'm sure there's ideas of what needs to be done.
Yeah, so you've got obviously you have government, you have the regulator, the independent regulator, Ofgem, highly focused on this, and then we have the relatively newly uh, set aside company, NESO, National Energy System Operator, which
Mm.
used to be owned by National Grid and was then hived off and put into independent sort of neutral control by the state to make sure that they were neutral and no conflicts of interest and so on. And I don't think there were, but it's now on its own, and so they will be looking at this whole planning horizon, what is needed and by when, and working with the industry, working with the regulators to try to come up with the most efficient, effective plan to get the network up and improved.
Yeah. Now you've worked all over the world. Is there, would you say everyone's on this same agenda? Or do you feel that other countries are leading it more than the UK? Or because we've always been quite strong regarding the national grid, haven't we?
Yeah, I think we have, and the development of our regulatory system is a model that has been borrowed in many
Yeah,
jurisdictions.
replicated. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good for us, good to see, and we've learned from them as well. Um, I think uh, different countries have moved at different paces. It depends on economic ability, really. I mean, the cost of this stuff is high. Yes, we have done well, relatively speaking, I think, although we can do a lot more. I think countries like China have actually done, a great deal, but it's often not reported. They have, I think, a real vested interest in getting this the effects of climate change sort of under control a bit more if it's possible, and that requires investment in renewables, and they're doing a great deal. Um, but certainly, I think the pace of progress links entirely to economic ability, um, and I suppose our ability as well to then maybe sell or give away technology and help other countries
Yeah.
who would benefit from that, given it is
And it's
a
not
global
just
it's a global issue.
technology giving away our knowledge and supporting the resource for that.
Yeah, um, and there's no there's a great deal of money looking to invest in a lot of this stuff. There's no doubt. It's are the regulatory frameworks suitably stable and attractive? Are government policies around the world suitably supportive, or will a change of government create a hiccup, which of course institutional investors, absolutely hate?
Mm.
And these are difficult. These are big questions, and I think as having sat so often on the investor side, it definitely exercises their their minds in their board meetings. It's a big issue.
Yeah. And one thing I'm really keen to understand is I don't know whether I've mentioned this, but I am CGB. I was a CGB apprentice, and I was based at Bradwell Nuclear Power.
No.
Um, so I'm very familiar with the grid, national grid. As an apprentice, we had to learn all about the grid as such.
Hmm.
What innovation have we seen? Have we seen advancement from obviously from the 90s to where we are today, or is it still evolving as well?
Well, I think it's fairly calm, the development. I mean, as I say, I'm not an engineer or a technical person, so it's not an area I'm very well qualified to speak on. I mean, I think some of the things that sit around it, for example, um, trying to help people accept new transmission lines where they are absolutely needed is an important change. So we've seen the creation of new designs for the transmission towers, or sometimes people call them pylons.
Yeah, yeah.
These are coming out of Hinkley Point C now in Somerset, and I've been down to see these new towers, and I watched the process when I was at National Grid, because it was a collaboration, I think, between National Grid and, is it the Royal College of Art, I think, and then a competition to design. And
Right.
by designing the new towers, I think the hope clearly has been that people will be more amenable to them being in their region where they live and work, and be less opposed to what are very important new transmission lines, without
Yeah,
which we can't transition to the renewables so easily.
yeah.
So things like that, I'm sort of more familiar with. The basic technology, yeah, we're always trying to make sure that the network is as efficient as possible, and this is where interconnectors go pretty well, because if you go from AC to DC power, then the losses on these lines, these cables, is reduced. There's a lot of cost to build the equipment, but the electricity losses are much reduced over long distances when you move to direct current.
Right.
So yeah, there's lots going on, and I'm sure a lot going on that I'm not aware of.
Yeah. And we are seeing probably more innovation in the process to speed things up. That's probably where we are seeing it the most, is what you alluding
Uh,
to regarding government.
yeah, I think that's where I see most of, because I'm particularly interested in that. Um, I think the supply chain is another area. So cable manufacture, wind turbine blade manufacturers, all that stuff, that is very important. And again, industry investors need to see the long term framework and have confidence in it to build
Mm.
factories, which alone take hundreds of millions of pounds and take years to develop and implement. So these are very big ticket items. So the
Yeah.
supply chain is another thing, and it can be quite lumpy around the world. One of the things I was involved with was a high court case where the subsea cable manufacturers around the world, many of them had entered into a cartel. This is some years ago. But that was discovered or admitted to, and there was a long process to deal with that. But that was almost a sort of manifestation of the problem that I'm alluding to, which is projects can be lumpy. Companies producing cable and equipment have little certainty about what will happen when. It's very difficult for them to plan.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it led to an illegal outcome for them that which has since been tidied up. But it's an example of the problem that the supply chain can face, in an extreme example.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. So, Matthew, it's come to this time in the interview where we like to put you on the spot. You've been on the spot all evening. Is there anything that you can give back? And I know this is a bit of a difficult one because we're talking to energy experts here. Is there something you can give back to our industry today as a takeaway?
I think it's that human element. I've never seen a project fail on technology, on engineering or construction or anything like that. I see projects come into difficulties or fail because misunderstanding between people, concern about things which could be dealt with perhaps. So I think given how long these projects take to develop, years and years, and how many, often hundreds of millions of pounds, just the development phase, let alone construction capex.
Yeah.
I think making sure that your stakeholders are clear about the end goal, that's usually quite easy, but helping them understand that getting there will not necessarily be a straight line. It will probably swerve all over the place, and to keep that in mind when they're going for the next bunch of permissions and budget to say, actually, we are not where we thought we were going to be, but we can still get back to where we want to go. That requires some bravery on the behalf of the client, the investors. So I think that is a key thing. And so a lot of my time has moved from sort of more from the practical project development to almost a sort of a coaching style with the client's project team, the team running the development, and helping them. Often these people haven't done it before, and helping them see through what can be quite a scary journey, and help them interact and communicate well with their bosses, who are actually going to approve the next phase or not. So I think it's helping them keep focused on the end goal, recognize the road there will be very swervy and bumpy. Sometimes you may have to just stop, and that's that. But usually these projects are, if they're well considered and thought through, are of significant national importance to one or two countries or more, and need to keep going, and will result in a good commercial investment for those investors, assuming these are private sector developments, and that's my background.
Yeah. Do you know that advice you're giving there could be rolled out to any energy management infrastructure or project? I was involved with a particular solar, it's a £4 million solar project where there had to be investment into setting all this up, and all the way along the stage we had to make sure the stakeholder was familiar with what was going on and what the hiccups were. It is a bumpy ride because we're all going into the unknown basically.
Indeed, and
well.
Yeah, and these interconnectors, they're great examples because they're connecting two countries, as I say, two governments, two regulators, two companies, two systems. It's very complicated. The UK-Germany project started in about 2016, got to financial close from memory in 2022. So that's 6 years of development. People changed, management changed, and now it's hoping to commission, probably will commission in 2028. So it's a very long time, 12 years.
Yeah.
Lots can happen.
When they run the cable, this is a bit of a sideline question.
Yeah.
When they run the cable, where does it run from and to?
Well, it will again. That won't be a straight line. So
No, no.
if
When they first start to run it, they
yeah.
started running it from the UK to
I see. Actually, I don't know that example, but I think it was UK, Norway. It depends on the timetable. So the seasons, if it's winter or summer, will have a big
right.
impact on the cable laying process. Obviously, you need calm, safe waters,
Yeah,
and they will have a program which will either prioritize the shallow coastal waters first or the deep middle sections first.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think so. It does. It varies a lot on the timing of the program. It will vary on the, Norway, for example, has a very significant deep shelf which drops off dramatically, whereas we have very shallowish waters
yeah.
towards our end of the North Sea. Um,
So
and
there's all
also,
those logistics to think about,
yeah,
isn't there?
yeah,
Yeah,
and are you going to sand or mud or rock? All these.
yeah,
So I think it's bespoke answer, but per project.
yeah. I don't know why I was thinking about the Channel Tunnel when they
Yeah.
built that because they did it from both sides, didn't they?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes,
I was
yes.
just thinking, oh, I wonder if they run two cables, one from one country to the other.
Yeah. Well, actually, and now there is actually an interconnector electricity cable in the Channel Tunnel
Oh, I can
called
imagine that.
Electlink.
Yeah.
That was developed by someone else, some other companies.
Right.
I got involved at the beginning, so there is now a power cable through there to connect the two grids as it happens.
Wow. That's
Yeah, yeah.
brilliant.
So that's another way of
Because there's
using.
a connection between Jersey, isn't there, and France, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. Jersey will. I'm pretty sure. I'm not involved, but I'm sure they will have get their power from the mainland in
Yeah.
France.
Because
Yeah.
I'm sure if we was to get like a map of all these, I'm sure there's quite a few cables. Do you know roughly how many interconnectors there are in across in Europe?
Oh, no is the quick answer, but I mean we've in terms of significant ones in the UK, we have what have we got? About seven or eight now. And as I've sort of gone through the list with
Wow.
numerous to what I call the big ones, the big DC cables, which have carry at least I don't know 1,000 megawatts
Yeah, yeah.
capacity and run for at least 150 kilometers or up to in Norway's case, it's the longest in the world, subsea 750 kilometers, something like
Wow.
that. A lot of cable.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, Matthew, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge today and obviously sharing. I've learned so much today and I appreciate that. I'm sure many people will get a good understanding because I think it's important that we understand what is there, what we're up against regarding the industry.
Good, good. Well, I hope so. Yeah, and I love hearing about the other bits that connect to my part of the energy sector, and by, as you say, by better understanding, we perhaps won't get so frustrated when something seems a bit weird and illogical, and actually there might be a good reason, and then we can go and try and fix it and
Yeah,
get to the end quicker.
brilliant. Well,
All
Matthew,
right.
thank you very much for your time. We look forward to hear more of these stories. Please, you and your family stay safe in these times.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for the invitation. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.